Welcome to PWA Studio Community Sync. Today is, October 2nd. It's October 2020. And today we have a few demos from the Obsessive Owls. Eugene's going to give us an I18N localization update. Macaulay may join and maybe give us a little preview of what I18N extensibility is going to look like. After that, on the same topic, Kalkabin has been hard at work documenting all the fun stuff that the Owls have been up to, so he's going to go over a PR reviewing those docs. We're also soliciting feedback in that PR, so if you want to go check that out, if there's anything missing there, any additional data points you want to see, just let us know. And then I'm going to round it out with a little demo about GraphQL colocation. We have an initiative to try to make talons a little bit easier to consume, and GraphQL colocation in Peregrine would make that a lot easier on y'all. So we'll do that very last. And then to round things out, Lars is going to give a little brief overview of the Adobe Developers Live conference that happened this past Monday. A lot of sessions happened. He presented, and they were all stacked all at the same time. So he's only going to give an update about what he attended. And then I can give a short little update about the sessions I was in as well, but it was a lot of fun. If you weren't able to attend, there's recordings of the event that you can go and watch as well. And then we'll briefly look at metrics, and I will go ahead and touch upon Reacticon is still coming up in about 10 days, so we'll kind of just give them a little press to see if we can get some PWA Studio fans in attendance. So without further ado, Eugene, you are up first. Are you ready? You are muted, or we can't hear you. Or I can't hear you.
I can't hear him either. It's funny because it worked in a stand-up.
Yes.
There he is.
There he
We can
is.
see. Oh,
It's funny. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen.
great.
So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so I'm gonna show you the work that have been done so far on internalization. And I have configured on my local environment two store views. Like one is English and the other is French. So we added this store views feature in the header. So it's now possible to switch store views and locales with this. So currently you see I have switched locale store view to French store, and I've got French homepage and header and footer translated to the French language. So as well as some of the category, you can see it's translated to French, it's jewelry in English, and have translated also one product, so we can switch on the product page to the different store view. Everything is translated, breadcrumbs translated, and even if you configure properly your URL rewrites, you will get URL for this store view, if you can see it when you switch on store. So also on French store view, we have two currencies configured: euro as default display currency and dollar as other currencies. So we can also switch currencies in this store view. Takes some time to. So you see every currency is in US dollars, despite of default display currency for French store view was euro. So also we can log in. It's currently a bug in Magento backend PWA with shopping cart, but it's in progress. I have some patched version on my local, so it works okay. So we have different parts of the app already translated, I mean UI. So for example, this shopping cart is checkout part is translated. I have used Google Translate to get my French locale. So if something is wrong and someone knows French, so don't blame me. Okay, and the other feature which is in progress now is using store code in URL. I will, so I'm sharing on the home screen. I will change some environment variable which is called use store code in URL. And rebuild my instance to changes take effect. So this use store code in URL, it allows you to see store code in URL and switch to respective store view when this code is detected in URL. So it's similar to Magento native feature. So, okay, it's generated. You see, if French store view has a far code in this URL. So if you go further, and for example, we switch to English, you will get English store code in URL. So it's the same code which is configured in Magento backend. And we can switch to French language just changing this code in the URL. So you see now current store view is changed to French. So that's it for now. Thank you.
That's really awesome, Eugene. And what about if I'm on a mobile device? Is that header going to be there?
Yeah, sorry. Header
is a leading question.
Yes, thank you. So we've got for desktop we have these features in the header, but for mobile device we have this in the drawer for store code and for store view and for currency. So we can switch it from here. Actually, you cannot switch. So yeah. It's now English, and we don't have other currencies configured for English store view, so it's only English switcher in the mobile view.
Very cool. We have had a few questions in chat. You have covered the SEO store view in the URL. Got some translation suggestions here for Chariot. And then Lars is curious about Hreflang. Is that
you mean? No, it's not implemented. It's like for search engine optimization, which
Yeah, main question is if we have on the PDS in English store already some French words, because typically if you implement a multi-store environment, then you need to implement Hreflang as well, also canonicals. And if you don't
Yes.
do it, yeah, Google will not happy about your site, and for that reason I'm asking, because it looks like that the server side or the redirect is handled by Magento itself, not by the app. And for that reason, maybe we don't have the information currently in the front end. It is a question more. If we already know about, hey, this product has the following URLs and French, Czech, etc. for each store view, because this is a typical requirement for our clients.
Yes, we have an upcoming epic of like multiple stores, and we will look a possibility to implement it there because it's like more complicated. And yeah, it's like we will try to add canonical URL somewhere, some way to define it from Magento, and also like language alternatives links for all available stores. That is a question, because it's like when we implement in multiple stores, it's also probably can be websites and store groups, which are also should be like included for alternatives if we have multinational or something like multi website like for different parts of the world. So it's probably all these alternatives should be listed in this the Hreflang links. So it's we are considering as a part of the upcoming epic.
Cool.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Just very nice work. The owls have been killing it. I know we haven't had an I18 update in probably a couple weeks, and kind of to see all this progress all at once is just amazing. Very nice work, guys. All right. Well, to continue on that theme, I will kick it over to James Kalkabin, who's going to talk about all of the amazing documentation around what you just saw.
Cool. Thanks, Tommy. Share my screen. All right. So the internationalization docs I've created around the work that the owls have done is in PR 2741. These aren't published yet, so to get a preview of that, you could just head on over to the PR and just view the markdown file. It renders pretty well in GitHub, but in this documentation, I go over internationalization as it relates to Magento Core versus what we do in PWA Studio, and I provide a very high-level overview of how everything works, including links to the underlying library, which is a React INTL from Format.js. This is for people who aren't familiar with how Magento does it, so I kind of lay it out or explain it in kind of those in terms that both audiences will understand. I talk about translation dictionaries, how we format IDs, and the syntax, and how it's different with Core Magento versus PWA Studio. I provide examples here and links to the actual syntax from Format.js. There's a lot you can do with this library, more than just variable replacement. I also talk about what language packages are, and how it works as a plugin. This is the work that Dave did in his PR. This isn't a lot yet because I'm planning a tutorial on actually how to create a language package. So this is just a description, a summary of what a language package is, what the criteria tier are for it. And then I go over the build process step by step. This is the same information as in Dave's PR, but it provides some insight into how how these different packages are compiled together and made available to the front end. Are there any questions for that?
Looks great.
There was a question from Lars about targets and extensibility, but I just got a message that we have the surprise demo from Dave. So if there are not any questions about docs, we can probably kick it over to Dave to talk about extensibility and internationalization.
Great, thank you very much. So to start, I'm just going to show a really small example NPM package we created, which illustrates how the I18N extensibility works. So this is the bare bones of what this package could be. You can actually implement this in any NPM package you already have, if you already have supplementary packages to your scaffolded project or your fork. It uses the extensibility framework. So the only special source in the package JSON is the PWA Studio targets entry, which declares an interceptor at I18-intercept. And then if we go look into that file, all we do in here is use the special features tab and assign this module name as having I18N true and targeting build pack. So this just tells the build system that this module contains some translations. And then we also have a I18N directory in the root of the package, which can contain the correctly formatted JSON files. So these are just the locales, en_us, fr_fr, so on and so forth. And then within here, you can declare your override translations or your new translations. This is technically using the wrong ID type. We built this example 8 days ago and changed our mind after that. But this would result in the app changing the word live chat to live chat override. And just to quickly illustrate how this is working and how it works out which modules have I18N support, we've modified the git client config.js, which is used by Webpack to build up the configuration. We import our new localization plugin, and we pass in an instance of virtual modules, so we don't have to do any writing to disk during the build. We also pass in the context. Context in this scope is either in a forked project, it will be the Venia concept directory. In a scaffolded project, it will just be the root of your scaffolded project. And then we pass in an array of directories to search. You can see here we pass in all the modules that have the I18N flag first, based on the order that the build bus has collected them in. And then we finally include the context as the final override, meaning your scaffolded I18N directory or the directory in Venia concept, depending on how your product is structured, will take the precedence for overrides. We also have to include virtual modules as a plugin in the root of the array. And the plugin is also, it's somewhat interesting what it has to do, but fundamentally it injects a new private function called fetch locale data, and this is documented in James's demo he just did. And fundamentally, this is doing all the logic to scan through the directories to find the relevant language packs based on a regex pattern somewhere. And then what it uses is it uses the inject plugin as part of Webpack, which the root components also uses to inject the new git locale function using this logic here. And then it does a lot of other stuff to do Webpack internals. And you can see the final window.fetchLocaleData is thrown in here. I'll throw these 3 links into the chat because I realized this was a really quick overview and probably this code doesn't make any sense until you read it all the way through. But this is how other packages can provide translations into the framework. Any questions?
Dave, I have one question. What is about if you want to use I18 in your own module? The idea is to have a standalone package, not overriding, or introduce um, new translations or new translation strings. That would be cool if we can provide some tutorial, like, hey, if you want to use multi-language for your own target module, this would be great, because this example shows only how to override, but not using some translation hooks or something like that, if I'm not
Yeah.
totally wrong.
So it's the same process to introduce new strings. You would just declare the new strings in here. It will only override matching IDs. But as James Kalkerman said, we're definitely going to build a tutorial around this example module and cover both of the scenarios of overrides in other packages and introducing new strings for your specific components. So we'll definitely get that tutorial up and demo that in a future session.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
No problem. Anything else? I'm going to quickly check the chat just to see.
I think that's the greatest feedback. It's annoyingly simple. I think that's the best thing you could ever say.
Well, I bet it's annoyingly simple. It means we did something right. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Hopefully we can get this over into your hands soon and you can enjoy localizing your apps.
Nice work.
Awesome. Well, yes, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Als. That is really shaping up to be a nice piece of functionality and kind of, it's the game changer of Magento. I mean, Magento being internationalized is kind of why we are what we are. So, it's good to see PWA Studio kind of catch up a little bit, and I know we were waiting on a lot of GraphQL coverage, but this is awesome work. All right, so I don't know why I always save myself for last. I should stop doing that. But saving the best, no, I'm not the best. Saving GraphQL for last. Let's talk about some colocation. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. I'm going to assume yes. Okay, so if you've been in the project, you may be familiar with this queries directory. I don't know all of the history behind it. I think there was an idea that if we shared quick queries across all components, that somehow it would optimize itself into being more performant. This was very early on in the project and maybe just something that just never actualized. And it turns out Apollo does this for you. When you provide GraphQL tags, Apollo will go through and scan all of them and kind of convert them into AST objects, and queries that are identical will share that object. So it's not going to like compile an AST from a query that it already knows about. So kind of this idea isn't needed. We can have queries collocated with components, and Apollo is going to do its amazing stuff and optimize all of that for us. So to kind of put our best foot forward, we don't want people to like see this directory and be like, oh, this is where queries go. We made an effort to start collocating queries with components, but we had them in Vinia UI. So what that meant was if you had a component, it obviously would have a talon, and any talons that had queries or mutations, I'm going to call them operations now, you had to pass as props to that talon. So that meant if I wanted to change something about that component, I had to import all of those queries. I can maybe change something about them if I wanted to, and then pass those to the talon. And the talon maybe gave me back the data that I wanted. So in an effort to make these talons more usable without all of that, without all those dependencies, we decided to move them. Let me. Okay, so we are. The idea is to move them to Peregrine. Again, this is like this is kind of a concept right now. This is our proposal and what we're going to do, but we are soliciting feedback. So if anybody has any suggestions or ideas that would make this easy, as a developer trying to like extend a Venia UI component. Please go to this PR. It's 2712. I'll post in the chat. I'll post in the PWA channel. But we have this pattern that we've kind of established where co-located with components, we define like component name.graphql.js. And in there, you'll see GraphQL queries and mutations defined. And then we kind of, we started doing this default export of all of the mutations. We used to kind of group them by mutation and query, but for kind of implementation purposes, we also appended mutation and query to the end of their name. That's just so the actual function that executes the query can reserve the name without the verb in it. So we decided to get rid of that layer of abstraction. So this is how query operations are going to be defined now. They're going to be in Peregrine, co-located with the Talon. And then you'll see in all of our Talons now, we're going to have a operations prop that takes those as the default. So that means anybody who wants to reuse, use, create account doesn't have to like bring in all of those operations into those component and pass them as props. Now it'll default to all of those props, and if there's something you need to change, or if you need to change nothing at all, you don't have to. So this should make it a little easier to consume these Talons. There's some discussion about naming. Naming's the hardest part. Operations might be a little generic. Working in GraphQL, I think they did a good job reclaiming operations as kind of a GraphQL term, but we may call it GraphQL operations. But that's also one of the things you can comment on. If this naming doesn't bode well with you, give us a suggestion. We're happy to change things up if it makes sense. So, so this PR, is getting large. We have moved all of those. I think I've gotten through everything but merge carts in this PR, where I have co-located all of these operations with their actual components. We're discussing if we need to be backwards compatible and kind of leave them around and just deprecate them. I'm going to assume everybody would say yes there, just in case anybody is using those. But we'll probably leave them around and deprecate them. And then an example of this with a component is exactly the same. Here's communications page. So this is a recent component that we did in the scope of my account. So this is the newsletter component. We call it communications page. So you'll see here that components themselves will follow the same pattern, that every component is going to have default operations. Operations will default to that, making the Talon easily reusable. So keep an eye on that PR. If you have questions or comments, do it there. Or if you have questions now, let me know. I can't see the chat. Anything in chat?
Yeah, there's a few things in chat. Oh, go ahead, Lars.
Yeah, there's a question from Christoph about how you solve the duplication thing, because there was some components they use the same query or the same mutation, and this was my main problem if I back in times where I started the session or the story, and why I don't finish it, and how you do solve it. Or
yeah, so we, in the scope of this PR, we just duplicated those usages. So if there were multiple components using the same GraphQL file, they were then moved and co-located with those components. I found that like most of the duplicate usage can probably be refactored out. So I think this is just a step in the direction of like, if you reuse an operation that's identical, that's probably a smell that like that component's probably reusable, and it should be kind of moved out of like whatever scope it's in. But in the scope of this, operations are going to be duplicated across those components, and then we assume there's going to be like a second phase where we kind of go through and kind of figure out why those were shared. So the overarching idea is going to be you should never share queries or mutations. You should share fragments. Like fragments is going to be like what needs to be shared between components. Like one component may cause a mutation, and the response it gets back might want to cause a re-render of another component. So that's where you would import the fragment from that other component and use that in your response from your mutations. So the idea is going to be don't share operations, share fragments, and then I hope there's going to be a third thing here where the fragments that operations consume is going to be extensible. So like if you ever need to, if you want to return additional data from a Talon that we aren't querying for, you can kind of just inject your fragment into that operation via extensibility, and then you can get that data back. And then there's a fourth thing, because we're very bad at this, that we need to establish that we always return raw data to support that one use case there, that if a developer wants to add anything to an operation, we usually do a bad job at I don't think it's our fault. I blame GraphQL. GraphQL like has the data nested like 3 layers deep. Like before you can get to your data, it's like data, the operation name, then maybe the thing you're after. So instead of having to do like data dot operation name dot my thing, we just cut out the middleman there. So that's another thing that we need to get better about is always returning raw data. I threw together a pretty terrible draft PR about a use operation factory custom hook that every Talon would use this and just pass operations into it, and it would pass you back all of those raw results that we would pass back to the component. But it's kind of just, it's a thought. It's possible. I think it might be out there if you want to look at that PR too, or there might be a branch. I'll link it in the chat. But that's kind of where we're at right now. We see this as like an incremental improvement. Get the operations into Peregrine. Then we start looking at kind of duplication and like the best way to share data between components. And then we start looking into extensibility and how operations can easily be extended, and returning raw data has a tie in there too. Great question. Very long answer. Sorry. Any other questions? All right. Well, then to round things out, I had forgot that James actually added top contributors to our README. So, it's very easy to get to our metrics now. If anybody else wanted to see, I don't think we update this regularly, so this might be a little dated, but there's a link down here. You can go and look at live statistics.
It's still the same.
Still the same. All right. So we got, and I like to do, sorry, Lars, I'm going to do like past 30 days.
It's okay.
So in the past 30 days, Hui has been, it's actually been us, the bottleneck. Hui gave us like 4 or 5 PRs all at once, and we've been kind of churning through those. I think we've had maybe 2 of those PRs merged. There's maybe 2 left. So you'll see they are at the top. Brendan has been helping us with his in his effort to upgrade to 8.0. He just found some like docs changes. There's also some extensibility issues he ran into that I think he worked through. So kind of just a shout out there that to everyone on the team. Steven and Dave got with Brendan. He was having this awful issue trying to upgrade to 8.0. Kind of something that like it was his problem, but we wanted to help, so we we kind of put effort there, and Dave and Steven were able to figure out what that problem was. So kind of just a call out there, like if you're having issues, let us know. We are happy to help. And then John and Lars still keeping us honest. I think Lars has had a couple PRs open and closed, so hopefully we can get you something fun to work on. Then just in general, if anybody's looking for work, I think the prioritized board is a little light, so just reach out to me. I'll be adding new work there, but we're trying to take the approach now, like, let's not assume what everybody wants to work on. If you don't see anything there that you're interested in, ping me, and I'll find you something that you are interested in. If you're interested in UI work, I'll find you UI work. If you're interested in back-end node stuff like Lars or extensibility, anything, I'll find something for you. All right, and then to round things out, I will just give a quick little shout out to an upcoming conference, Reacticon. It's coming up October 13th through the 15th. This is a fun event that kind of highlights everything PWA Magento. So it's a 3-day event where each day they highlight kind of a different technology. So I think day 1 looks to be Vue storefront related. Day 2 is a bit PWA Studio. Let's see, Front Commerce, Deity. It looks like, maybe they kind of split it up a little bit. I think maybe they got rid of the days per stack kind of thing. So 3 days of awesome content. We'll have Jordan and Lars, our fearless maintainers, there on Wednesday to give some talks about their experience with PWA Studio and extensibility. We still have Zetlin on here. I don't know if we found a replacement, but attend the event and you'll find out. And then Eric here is on the call as well. He's going to drink some coffee. Sounds.
Hey, if you need coffee, I'm your person. We just did a poll that looks like equal amounts of coffee and beer to be had during that session. So it's all science. That's the research there, but that looks like the poll that we'll be having. No, so yeah, just a quick, basically just a lay of the land, current state of PWA Studio from a product standpoint. And so we've got a lot of content there happening on the 14th. And so I'm looking forward to sitting in on that and then wrapping things up with you at the end.
Awesome. Well, that is all I had for today. Are there any other questions? Any other quick demos? Anything else before we sign off?
Great job, Tommy. You rocked it today.
Yeah, question from Michael. Yes, this is a international event, the opposite of Adobe Developers Live, where it's going to be very early Central Texas time, or Denver time if you're in Denver. So hopefully they record things. I don't know that for sure if they're going to be recording, so that's a question I'll ask and get to y'all before. There will be. Okay.
There will be. Giselle was writing me a mail yesterday or 2 days ago about recordings, and he will upload this to Twitch and YouTube. And I think my session I will also record with OBS, and maybe I can put it on YouTube as well. I will ask him.
Awesome. Well, yes. If you're not willing to pull an all-nighter to get your PWA fix, there will be recordings available. Cool. Well, that's all we have. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you, everyone who demoed. Things are looking awesome, as always. So be sure to channel my inner Andrew. Smash, like, and subscribe. Honk and subscribe. Honk if you like it. Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your day, evening. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Tommy.
Bye.
Yep.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.